happy to host a conversation with an extraordinary lineup of apprenticeship movers and shakers in the youth apprenticeship movement here in San Diego. And so, first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Joe Stark, Regional Apprenticeship Director for the San Diego and Imperial Counties Community Colleges Regional Consortium. And I'm also joined by my partner in crime here, Jenny Preciado. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Preciado. I am the apprenticeship employer relationship liaison and working with Joe. And we are excited to share with you what's going on this morning. And happy to have you all here. Thank you.
Super. And just a shout out to Rachel Sanchez, who's on the call as well. She's one of our employer relations liaisons. She's given us a hand today, and um, she's going to help us actually get some new apprenticeships in the healthcare field, right, Rachel? So we'll more on that later. But thank you for giving us a hand here.
Thank you, Joe.
Awesome. So with that, we'll introduce some of our great panelists here. Why don't we start with Team Miramar? Darren, you want to introduce your folks?
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Miramar, I'm going to start with our newest person, which is Cameron Berry. Cameron, I don't know if you're able to come on, but as you are, Cameron is hired as a project analyst and will be helping titling him the COYA grant manager, amongst other things with the COYA grant. But he is got a great skill set. We're happy to have him join our team. And then I'll popcorn it over to Dean Hester, who I see on next.
Morning, everybody. I'm Jacqueline Hester. I serve as a pleasure for the Dean for Public Safety. Good to see everyone.
Thank you, Dean Hester. And also on the call as our partnership with our planning grant is Todd Beverman from CAL-JAC. I just saw Todd.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Todd Braverman. I am our Director of Education and Training for the California Firefighter Joint Apprenticeship Committee, more commonly known as CAL-JAC, as Darren had just mentioned. So again, we are one of the main apprenticeship providers within the state for, of course, our firefighters. We also are really embedded in the pre-apprenticeship side and host, again, numerous academies all throughout the state, again, for not only the opportunity youth, but again, to really, with the initiative and effort to really diversify our fire service. So I'm excited to be here to provide some context based on the partnerships that we have through the COYA grant with Darren, as well as some other folks down in San Diego.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for being here, Todd. Yeah, let's popcorn over to Alex from San Diego County Office of Ed.
Hi, everyone. Alex Becker. I'm a program specialist on the College and Career Readiness team at San Diego County Office of Education. If you're not familiar with our organization, we support all of the 43 K-12 school districts in San Diego County. And more specifically, our team is looking at how to develop regional talent pipelines into our key sectors. We do a lot in apprenticeships. So we're an LEA for a local education agency for a bunch of apprenticeships that are already registered, some that are waiting to be registered. We are sort of spearheading the growth of pre-apprenticeships around the county in our high school CTE programs. And then we also are registering our own apprenticeship for CTE instructors in high school and adult schools. So I think that's a good enough overview of our work with apprenticeships. And then I'll pass it over to Mike Roberts, who's one of the apprenticeship programs that we work closely with.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Alex. So Mike Roberts, I'm the founder of Creating Coding Careers. I am a software engineer by trade, so I still keep my hands busy as a CTE instructor for San Diego County Office of Education, Juvenile Court, and Community Schools. Work with partners like Alex, Wanda Rogers, who I see on the call here, to create pre-apprenticeship into apprenticeship pathways. At Creating Coding Careers, we're really focused on technology careers. So we were blessed by the state with one planning grant for a data engineering apprenticeship program that we'll be launching next year. As well as we got an announcement from the chancellor that our other three planning grants were approved. So we'll also be expanding apprenticeship roles in cyber, cloud, and AI. If you add what we already do, which is software engineering and QA, I think we cover a lot of the technology career pathways. And ultimately, my goal is to create pathways from youth that are in high school into high wage, high growth jobs using the apprenticeship degree pattern. So really creating some synergies between how we look at our degrees and our like work-based learning pathways.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And finally, let's hear from our friends at Vehicles for Change. I think I saw Emilio on the call.
Hi everybody, I'm Ivan Corona with Vehicles
Oh,
for
that's right,
Change.
Ivan. Sorry.
That's okay. We're both in the same office, but on different laptops. So we'll be sharing one microphone. Vehicles for Change, and I have Emilio. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is Emilio Flores. I'm the Director of Development with Vehicles for Change. And we're a relatively new COYA grantee. And so we'll be talking about sort of our experience kind of getting started with apprenticeships.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Before we dive into the conversation with the panel, which is really, of course, the highlight for today's presentation, I wanted to share just a very brief introduction, kind of add a little bit of context to this morning's conversation. But that's sort of what's on tap there as far as the agenda. And then here are the community colleges that Jenny and I both support, and Rachel as well, through strong workforce program funding, as well as a generous grant from the James Irvine Foundation. Always got to acknowledge our funders. So we'll kind of dive in. First, what the heck is COYA, right? So you've probably heard us use this acronym. It's California Opportunity Youth Apprenticeship. You may have noticed in recent years, there's really been historic investments in state and federal funding and grants aimed at apprenticeship development, especially in what we call new and innovative apprenticeships. That's what IACA there is referring to. So these are sectors outside the building trades. And so most of us are aware of, building trades, fire trades included, have a really long and successful history of using the apprenticeship model. But, this model is relatively new in a number of other industry sectors. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today is apprenticeships that are kind of in that new and innovative category. In California, there's been funding and opportunity gaps really when it comes to investing in youth apprenticeship, I'd say as a whole, but particularly when we look at opportunity youth, who are, you can see here from kind of the definition. Again, these are folks in the 16 to 24 age range, typically not enrolled in school and or work-based learning or employment. So the COYA grant is new this year. And the new grants came out last spring. They're offered through the Department of Industrial Relations, which is the agency under which Division of Apprenticeship Standards is housed. And so this was the first round. And we hope that, this is something that does continue, kind of similar to California Apprenticeship Initiative. We hope this is kind of in the grant cycle and budget cycle for years to come, hopefully. Just a little bit about the types of grants that were offered. You had planning and implementation grants for pre-apprenticeship as well as apprenticeship. And again, focused on that opportunity youth population and new and innovative categories. So again, we're going to hear from some folks on the panel today that were awarded COYA grants. Just a little bit about apprenticeship. I know, we have different sort of levels of kind of understanding about what apprenticeship is and, what's all the buzz about, and really we wanted to share that, when we talk about apprenticeships, most of us are familiar with internships, but with apprenticeships, it's attractive to both apprentices and employers, especially kind of when you do a little bit of a comparison here. And as you can see, on the one hand, there's much more investment that goes into apprentices, versus maybe interns, but we would argue much more value in the long term and return on investment across the board with apprenticeships. Namely, you have a clear path for talent development, certifications, degrees, as Mike mentioned. And the most important thing, apprenticeships are tuition free for apprentices. So take that, student debt crisis. So really, an incredible opportunity. Obviously, as we look at populations that can't afford to do a lot of our working adults and opportunity youth. I mean, they can't afford to do, donate their time on an internship. So apprenticeship has a lot of benefits for both employers and apprentices. And then finally, we're not going to get into this too much, but I figured it was probably good to at least give folks that aren't as up to speed on kind of, the apprenticeship sort of ecosystem. And we have folks on the call that are, kind of filling different roles and sometimes multiple roles, right? So like I'll point to our CBOs on the call. Sometimes they're filling multiple roles. They're an employer, they're an intermediary, they're a sponsor, and so, depending on the role, it sort of comes along with different responsibilities and so forth when it comes to apprenticeship. So with that, we wanted to, again, that's just sort of a quick overview. And so at this point, we wanted to really just sort of dive in with our panel. And so we have a sort of a list of pre-prepared questions we're going to ask folks, but we also encourage you to put questions in the chat. We're going to be monitoring that. And then as time allows, again, there may be other questions. And if you want to come off mute later, that would be great. So our first question, and we'll just kind of do a little bit of a round robin here. So when we look at, sort of some significant challenges, maybe a couple in each of your respective industries related to the talent pipeline and really meeting the workforce needs of employers, how do you see sort of your apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship really addressing that need? And maybe we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, so I think especially in tech, since we're seeing really large retrenchment, a lot of employers have traditionally kind of poached talent from other employers, and are almost always seeking experienced talent. And so it's really challenging to be able to convince them that they should be investing now in early career talent when it's just not in their nature to do so. I was at Afrotech last week in Houston, and there's a ton of huge companies there. So it's very encouraging to see companies coming out and investing in diverse recruiting. But the conversations I was having with the recruiters were really centered around really seasoned talent. So when you think about the emerging technologies like AI, and cybersecurity, we need lots of people. But I think right now the appetite is really for people with lots of experience or again a degree. And that's where I think if we can get to degrees being more popular and being more common, I think we can start addressing that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Let's take that same question over to CAL-JAC. Talk a little bit about because and I'll just kind of introduce this a little bit. So CAL-JAC is a statewide intermediary. So they work with California fire agencies all over the state. And so just from that sort of statewide view, Todd, again, same questions there. What are some of the challenges around talent development, meeting the needs of the workforce in your industry as well that we're sort of focusing on with your grant project?
Yeah, absolutely. So as was mentioned, so we work with about 200 fire departments throughout the state of California. We also, that is really kind of the apprenticeship component, of the CAL-JAC. We have the pre-apprenticeship side that has been mentioned a few times as well, which is really, again, tuition free, basically opportunities for that educational academy component. We are, I guess, for lack of a better term, a road show where we are up in Northern California periodically. We're in Southern California. It's really dependent on the departmental partnerships that we are able to obviously solidify. So when it comes to the COYA side of the house, really we are partnered. We are partnered with, of course, Miramar, which we're super excited about. I'll get into that as we talk, and I'm sure Darren and Dean Hester will to some level as well. But we're also partnered with San Diego College of Continuing Ed down in Southern California and the Public Works Alliance, which kind of have multiple locations throughout the state. But when it comes to the broader challenges that I would say we are seeing, I mean, one of the main ones is really just the fact that it's like the minimum requirements for becoming a firefighter have pretty significantly changed over the past, multitude of years. So, when people think about, fire departments, it's like you think of that single role firefighter. It's like for us here at the JAC, it's like we have over 20 occupations, ranging from really kind of the more now entry level roles, which are the dual roles of firefighter EMT, firefighter paramedic. So it's not just that single role, it's the expansion really into these medical fields, because it's like majority of these calls that these departments are getting, rarely is it an actual fire, right? It's the medical needs, it's that medical support, really the whole entirety of that EMS side. But I mean, those roles span all the way down to, as tangible of and nuanced of a role as like a firefighter diver, right? So people that are in the water, like these roles have changed so significantly that, again, it really makes the entry requirements a little nuanced for folks to understand and how to basically find that pathway into the fire service. The other one that we're seeing is, I mean, really, as many industries are seeing, really in the post-COVID world, it's like having the competition be, some of these high-tech agencies, some with really competitive benefits. It's like firefighting and being in those departments is a very physical role in and of itself. As we strive to diversify our recruitment efforts, and that being kind of a real tangible piece that we're moving towards, that also involves getting women into the fire service. And when you look at, if I were to look at Google or other places that I've been personally, it's like you have, up to 6 months of maternity leave. It's like in the fire service, it's like individuals and women, really want to, again, push that pregnancy right up to the cusp, because the labor in and of itself of the role is one that drives people to the role. But people don't necessarily always want that light work, office duty. It's like the dynamics are so different, but the benefits are not the same, right? There is a wide spectrum, and we're seeing folks, again, especially young people, kind of make those career decisions early on, that there could be more greener pastures, if you will, down the road. So again, we are really trying to be competitive within our space by offering these pre-apprenticeship pathways, by diversifying our recruitment efforts, and really trying to create connections with young people and diverse audiences to make sure that they feel that this career is one that is suitable for them and a real asset down the road in their life. It's not putting people in debt, going to an institution. But it's still providing the same, if not more, of a lucrative career down the road. So we are really trying to, again, maximize the opportunities that we have by putting these free opportunities in front of folks and creating partnerships that really allow participants to engage with the fire service.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And I appreciate one of the things you mentioned, which we want to kind of put a pin in and come back later, which is the representation issue and some of the industries that we're talking about. Ivan, let's go to you. Same question. What are some of what are some of the challenges around workforce development pipeline in your industry?
Yeah, thanks everybody. I also just want to take a second to kind of discuss what we do as an organization, because I don't think we really touched on that. But we work primarily with justice impacted individuals and getting them the technical training and wraparound services needed to become entry level service technicians in the automotive industry. And so, in the automotive industry, I would say the pipeline. Discussing the pipeline issue, the last 15, 20 years, we've seen a really big push for 4-year degrees in high schools. And I remember there was a shop the year before I got to high school, but not the year that I got to ninth grade, unfortunately, right? So those pipelines, that interest in having shop and those hands-on trainings are going away in the school systems, which is really unfortunate. You're always going to have those gearheads who are those kids who are going to be always be into cars, but it's not the same when you get to be in a controlled environment and in a learning environment. And we see that here with our trainees, that they really crave that hands-on knowledge. They really crave that physical, getting dirty, getting into the weeds of things. So, in addition to this, we're seeing that a lot of the older technicians and are now retiring, and so the average age of the average technician is it's in the late 50s now, mid to late 50s, and so there also goes a lot of knowledge base there. We're luckily taking advantage of a little bit of some retirees who still want to impart a lot of knowledge. And so we're hiring, folks who've had 35 plus years of being master technicians. And so, that also lends itself to some of the trainings that we're having in our program, really get to learn from some, amazing, amazing people with a lot of knowledge in the industry.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Thank you,
don't know
Ivan.
if you want to, Emilio, I don't know if you want to touch anything else.
I think you nailed it.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, Ivan. So kind of opening it up as well to the LEA partners that are part of the panel. So there was mention a little bit earlier of kind of referencing, we know that there are sort of those historic systemic forces at work that have really contributed to a lack of access and opportunity for a number of, BIPOC, underrepresented communities into registered apprenticeship. And so, you know, perhaps you could touch a little bit on sort of, particularly as it relates to, I think, pre-apprenticeship as well. How will your program sort of address some of what have been, some of those inequities, in your sector as it relates to registered apprenticeship? So, just wanted to kind of open that up to the panel if anyone wants to take that one.
Yeah, I can take that one. With regard to the COYA grant, and some of our one of our CAI grants, we've housed our pre-apprenticeship. So the one that we're doing with Creating Coding Careers with Mike, it's housed within our juvenile court and community schools. So, like Ivan mentioned earlier, we're also working with justice impacted students while they're still in these court schools. So these are students who have been mandated by the court to attend these special schools before being reintegrated back in their mainstream high school. So we had existing career tech ed programs there, and we're modifying the curriculum to make them pre-apprenticeship. So students are not just getting credit for completing a CTE pathway or class. Now we can add that pre-apprenticeship piece, and then making that warm handoff to Creating Coding Careers. Or we also have the culinary program, which we work with Kitchens for Good, if you're familiar with them. They're a San Diego County culinary apprenticeship.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Any other the panelists want to address that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. Our program is primarily focused on the reentry population, it's going to be a large majority of folks that are from underrepresented or underprivileged communities. In order to kind of do our outreach, we're working a lot with the reentry organizations. We're working with the local workforce development board. So we really made an effort to outreach to folks that are underrepresented. I mean, that's our primary focus. And so with the COYA grant, we are exploring. So right now we're running a program that is it's not an apprenticeship yet. So we're getting a COYA grant as a planning grant to operate an apprenticeship, hopefully in the next year. And so with this grant, we're exploring the opportunity to work more with the juvenile justice detention centers in San Diego and some of the other folks that are working with youth, specifically justice impacted youth. And so that's kind of where our focus is going to be. And this COYA grant is giving us the opportunity to really build those partnerships and those relationships with those other organizations to then have this pool of younger folks to join our program.
Great. All right. Thanks, Miguel. Any other reactions from the panelists on that question?
I'll just throw in, like, one of the things that I think is significant about the work that we're doing is that it's really also about designing a playbook for technologists to implement company-driven earn and learn programs. And I think beyond the impact that we can directly make in the services that we provide, being able to show other people that this model can be successful and show companies the value they can get from these diverse populations that they typically can't connect with and there's no bridge. Really does, again, serve not just the individuals here that we have the capacity for, but as a way for us to build this capacity to get people that are traditionally not in these roles access to them.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
And Joe, I can just add to,
Sure.
with respect to the fire service, one of our goals in the planning grant for the underrepresented group is to demystify the job of a firefighter, because there are so many like kind of bias and concepts to what a firefighter is. And often it's like, oh, you have, like, I remember when I was starting out, you have to have a family member in the fire department to get hired. Oh, you have to be, you can't be a white male. You can only be a white male. It's gone back and forth, and those bias are not there. But the community that, unless you know somebody that works in the fire service, you don't know, So our intent is to really get out in the K through 12 schools, make the connections, particularly in the Title I schools in the underrepresented areas, and demystify what our career is, and bring people in that are like-minded and would have benefited from this opportunity when we were younger and in school ourselves. And a big part of that is addressing what are those needs. And I give the example: a Hispanic female is not going to ever hear go out and be a firefighter. I had a student many years ago, a Hispanic female, that came and got an opportunity to do a ride along with me as a fire captain. You know what the barrier was for her to come do a ride along at the fire station? Her dad, because he was afraid of her spending the night in the fire station. So we had to, I never even thought about that as an issue. And so long story short, we brought her father into the firehouse for breakfast in the morning. We introduced her to the crew, and he got to see where she was going to stay. And she spent the night with us and went on some calls and things and got to see what that career is about. But never would I even thought about that being a barrier. So it's understanding culture, it's understanding different groups and what their traditions are, and then knowing that, hey, we can't continue doing the same exact thing, or else we would have found that immigrants came over to our country, and fire and police was typically Irish, right? So a lot of things have changed, and we want to continue that as we work with the COYA grant. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Darren. So moving into another question, and we referenced it earlier with the slide, but also as you can tell, listening to the conversation, this is systems work, right? And it can be very challenging because you're relying on a lot of different partners and kind of a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces, right? So we kind of know apprenticeship program development, particularly in this new and innovative category, really does kind of take a village and a strong community network. And so just wanted to hear from some of the panelists, what are your thoughts around maybe key relationships, partnerships you felt were really critical, and just other thoughts around maybe even how, as a system, we can kind of get better at this, right? Maybe make it easier. I know I can see Mike's expression in a few minutes, that is. But no, and we also wanted to acknowledge, I think I saw a representative from Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Maria's on, so welcome DAS, because as we know, they're a critical partner at the state level in this, right? So, all right, so anybody want to take that hot button question? Okay, Ivan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did really intentionally from the get-go, and we've only been around for a year and a half as an organization, as a nonprofit here in San Diego, was really to not only teach the technical side of of the um, of the equation, right? But also we were mindful to um, provide wraparound services and provide support for our trainees, right? Specifically with folks who are dealing with being justice impacted, they have a significant amount of barriers to their lives, right? And so we know, for example, that the average unemployment for somebody who's within the first 3 years of being released is anywhere between 3 to 5 times what the national average is, right? And once somebody does find a job, they only make around 60 to 75 cents on the dollar. Somebody who hasn't been previously incarcerated, and so we took it upon ourselves to really make sure that we worked with a lot of the other reentry populations, not only for pipeline to feed people into our program, but also to see what they were doing and seeing what services we could provide and not reduplicate. But we really focused a lot on mental health services, on housing providers, substance abuse, our local government, so including all 5 of our district supervisors have supported us in the past. Obviously, DAS and our LEA, Butte County, they've been amazing supporters. And Joe, you have been a champion for us for a very long time, so we also thank you for that. But we were intentional from the get-go, right? And we do a lot of things specifically, as an example, we have one of our trainees in this cohort who unfortunately had to drop out for medical reasons. Where it's something beyond his control altogether, right? And so we're not going to say, that's it. You're not able to come back. We're working with him. We're working with his doctors specifically. We have a very solid case management department to work with not only him, his doctors, in order to help him and get all the support that he needs. And as soon as he's able to return, which I believe is going to be able to be in the next cohort that we start, he's going to come right back and hopefully finish and graduate, a little bit later. But we take every person as they come to us, and I think we have to acknowledge that everybody's in a different position as well, right? So and we try to meet them specifically where they are.
That's great. Thanks, Ivan. Other responses from the panelists, just in terms of kind of the systems work, things we can get better at, things that we feel really make a difference, move the needle.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in and share that. I think first and foremost, the most important stakeholder or set of partners are companies. Every apprenticeship is a job, and it needs to start with adding value long term to the organization, and for them to see that while there may be some initial investment they need to make, it's going to pay off in the long run if they start to change some of their hiring practices. To support that, I think having funding, even if it's whether it's a combination of private and public funds, and we can braid those together to really mostly incentivize the employers. I think if we can do more to incentivize them now, we will be able to do less. But I don't think we've reached a high enough tipping point with the incentives that we're offering to employers for those to be the reason why organizations would do this. So we're not funding it with enough urgency to sort of create that sort of like a catalyst or a flywheel. Now it is helpful, don't get me wrong. It's really great to get support, public support. But I feel like if we could step on the gas a little bit, then that would, I think, greatly increase the chance that companies will see that it makes sense for them to hire early career professionals, especially in IT. We have all of these emerging opportunities across a variety of industries as they start to kind of digitize and move into this digital. Like there's a ton of opportunities for jobs. It's just, again, from a private standpoint, from a business standpoint, they're always sort of looking at like short-term goals. And the more we can incentivize them to think more long-term, I think the easier it is for us to kind of get it going. My experience has been that when a company hires apprentices, they come back and they're like, hey, we were amazed by this. It blew our expectations, and they're all on board. And so it really is like, to me, the most important party is getting companies on board, getting as many of them to adopt this as possible. And once they do, then they'll be all in.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, in my experience, I've never heard an employer say, God, what a shame we did that apprenticeship thing. Boy, that was a big waste of time. Like it's always the opposite, right? And yeah, I like what you said about certainly the funding. We're seeing a lot of funding on the LEA side, or a good portion of it, but we would like to see more of that incentive funding for the employers, as well as I think Ivan touched on a lot of those support services that are just critical for, the apprentices and the populations that we're trying to serve and set up for success. So appreciate that. All right, any other responses on that one? The panel? We got a couple other questions left, and then we'll open it up to the group. So we've touched on it a little bit, but a big part of the focus of COYA and a number of other grants is really around providing a lot of those support services that some of which we've heard about, to really set up apprentices for success. To some degree, there have been some level of employer incentives, but probably not as much as we'd like. But with regard to the apprentice support side of it, we wanted to hear maybe from some of the panelists around, with this particular grant, what are you looking to sort of beef up, strengthen, put into place to really strengthen that support system for apprentices and pre-apprentices?
I can start. And I'll add the caveat that, again, the CAL-JAC, we are not necessarily a recipient of the COYA. We do our own grant sourcing, but we are partnered, obviously, with folks that I had referenced earlier, Darren, of course, and Miramar being kind of a prominent one here on the call. So I think, in terms of what we are doing, I think for us at the JAC, it's like our partnership with Miramar is a very key opportunity for us because we are moving into the firefighter one space. Normally we train and have pre-apprenticeship opportunities in the EMT and the paramedic side of the house. So I think when we think about strategic partnership, it's like this is definitely one that is very meaningful to us and hopefully very meaningful to the folks, obviously, that we are going to support Darren and the Miramar team in sourcing. So in that space, becoming a firefighter has become obviously more logistical than it had prior, where normally it was like you have to be 18 and have a driver's license. Like that was the initial standard. Those standards have changed, and the baseline like prerequisite of has kind of become needing that firefighter one component and having some of the EMS and the medical, side of the house as well. So I think, again, it's putting ourselves in the right situation is one element of that. But I think, two, as we think about, wraparound service is like what JAC will always bring to the table and what we'll support our partners in doing is, again, really emphasizing some of those wraparound services. Other folks have mentioned it, already, but it's that, again, utilizing these fundings to ensure that we have the appropriate line of tutoring, ensuring that we have those coaching opportunities available for these individuals. It's like we can't have full reliance on what that support system looks like out of the classroom or out of that space. So we need to make sure, obviously, that we are moving forward and building that out in a way that is really meaningful. We also tend to have childcare supplement, transportation supplement, like really to make things as fluid and easy without a hindrance to the standard life that is in existence for these individuals, because it's like we will see that retention become much more difficult if we aren't supportive in those spaces. We also are going to work a lot, in developing some of these mentorship channels. It's like our employers, to Mike's point, are really our department. So it's like putting faces to these departments is really meaningful for, as we have seen with our cadets internally in the JAC, and one that we expect to be continually meaningful as we branch out and have and support these COYA sponsored groups as well. So it's really kind of putting, again, and demystifying, to Darren's point earlier, that fire service culture, but also it's demystifying the local departments that are in place of where these COYA grant recipients are, because that hopefully will be the pathway of folks having this opportunity and apprenticeship down the road.
Great, great. Thank you, Todd. Any other responses from panelists on that one? Around some of the support services that you're planning, any of those types of activities or supports?
Well, I guess it'll come as no surprise that we use a lot of technology in our program, and we use AI. And most importantly, it helps for us to have a lot of feedback mechanisms to be able to tell where people are, how much progress they're making, kind of indicate which students are at risk. And then I think one of the other big components of apprenticeship is mentorship. And so we're able to get people the kind of support that they need and mentors like matched up with them pretty much in real time to help with that process of making sure they just stay on track and being able to support them. And that makes a huge difference. I think the more apprenticeship programs can take into consideration the technology that's available today, you can create a much more personalized learning experience as we're trying to track like the knowledge, skills, and abilities that people are gaining. Again, being able to leverage some technology and tools around that is like way more helpful than I unfortunately sometimes see. It's like still rosters on paper and like manually like, tracking the hours that people are spending in RSI. And the more we can move to like very individualized, very personalized measurements of the skills that people are gaining, I think the more we'll be able to demonstrate actual value that folks are gaining out of the programs.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I wanted to kind of reference a resource and obviously acknowledge Yvonne de la Pena, the executive director of CAL-JAC, who's joining us, and great to have you on, Yvonne. Did you want to talk a little bit about, and we're kind of responding to Darren's question around Title I high schools. Did you want to share the resource that, or talk a little bit about the resource you put in?
Yeah, so this is a list that we look because when we recruit for our EMT and paramedic academies for our pre-apprenticeship, we do look at the Title I schools. So we have access to that. And that's why I was able to provide you, Darren, the list that we got from the Department of Education. And you can filter that by county. So it is important to reach, the demographic in the Title I schools and to, if you're looking for a diverse workforce, and I think, you're speaking to that at, I think maybe in a little bit later, I had to jump off for a second, so I might have missed a little bit, but, really trying to get individuals who may have not have thought about pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship is one of our goals. For firefighter one, for EMT in our pre-apprenticeship, it's a lot easier to get people off the street, so to speak, who may have never thought of a career in the fire service because that is kind of a beginning level in pre-apprenticeship. But when we start to talk about paramedicine, you have to get somebody who's already completed and has worked as an EMT. So it's a kind of a little bit of a different recruitment strategy with our paramedics. So if you have occupations that are truly entry level where you just want to introduce somebody to the profession, going towards Title I schools a great recruitment tool.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just want to thank Yvonne. If you don't know her, she's consider her to be sort of one of the titans in the state apprenticeship world in terms of her work around funding and really trying to get the resources to the programs that where they belong. So we just want to acknowledge that and thank you, Yvonne, for being on.
Yes. Thank you, Yvonne and Todd.
Absolutely. All right. So maybe, well, if it's okay, Ivan, I wanted to put you on the spot a little bit because you mentioned something a little bit earlier that I know has something I've heard more and more about that I'm definitely excited to really look at how we can provide more of those supportive services for apprentices. And you mentioned, sort of using that case management approach. which we know is definitely resource intensive, and isn't necessarily covered always by, sort of the regular sources of funding that many of us are familiar with. So talk a little bit about sort of how you're addressing that case management approach and what that kind of looks like with your apprentices.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Oftentimes it's very much overlooked, what we do, but we are taking a very holistic approach to our case management, and that includes meeting with them on a weekly basis, providing anything and everything from gas cards or transit cards, transportation needs. Some of our trainees, for example, need food assistance. So our case manager will look for pantries where they can go and get food, or even at times if it's too far away or whatnot, we'll take it upon ourselves to go and pick up on their behalf and bring it to them. We've provided clothing. We've been really, really lucky to have partnerships with transitional housing and emergency housing. We had, and again, we prevented somebody dropping out of our program because they found themselves homeless halfway through our program. We made a couple of phone calls, and then went in and even helped move some of their belongings for them. So, we, like I said, there's no straight pathway for any one of our trainees. Everyone is in a different place in their reentry journey, and so we try to do as much as we can. And we do, like we said, we take a really real holistic approach. We touch on their mental health. We touch on finding solutions or finding preventative ways for them to manage stress. We really focus on, hey, maybe it's take 30 minutes and go for a quick walk to release some sort of stress. And so our caseworker, Manuel Morales, does a fantastic job with our trainees, and we've really just, I don't want to say lately, but we've really settled on a really nice sweet spot of having anywhere between 9 to 12 trainees in our cohorts. Any more than that, then it gets a little crazy. Specifically, we're working within the space that we have, and any fewer than that, and then we're just kind of hanging out and not doing anything. Not just kidding. There's always stuff to do, but yeah, I mean, I think that for us, taking that little holistic approach and making sure and working with them to make sure that they're going to be successful, to be here.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it kind of gets back to Mike's point a little earlier about, really it's critical. There's no one source of funding that's going to do it all, right? You really have to really work on trying to piece it together and braid that funding in a way where you can really create something comprehensive, and particularly around some of those key, counseling and other services that really are, make such a difference in terms of the success rate. So before we kind of transition, we wanted to kind of open it up with some questions from the audience, but is there anything else any of the panelists wanted to touch on that we didn't get to before we open it up for questions?
Joe, I'll ask if I could. I'll start off with Darren from Fire Technology at Miramar. One of the goals in the planning grant is to look at-risk students and some that are in the justice system. But to work in our field, it's not impossible. Like CAL FIRE has a program that inmates work on the fire line, and they can work to get rehabilitated and then potentially work in the CAL FIRE system afterward. But I was also curious about resources for students that are in the juvenile system or young adults that have a criminal record on resources for expungement that we could potentially link and use to help them because I know CAL FIRE and the state is working on a way to do something with respect to getting licensors and working with those that have like low-level felons but can still be licensed as an EMT. But we need to look into resources for that so that when we do speak to these folks, we have an opportunity to say not only, yeah, we do recognize you had a record, however, we have resources available for you to work to get that record resolved and expunged potentially so that you can be licensed. I don't know if anybody has experience in that in this call, but I certainly would appreciate any resources.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. That's really critical. And I think a part of this too is, with this group that we have together today, we're definitely going to be sending out, notes and contact info. So, because we do want to, as we know, it takes a community, it takes a network, and the stronger we can make the network here in our San Diego Imperial region, the better, and really connecting to some of those resources that Darren and others have mentioned. So, but yeah, if anybody does have information on that piece, please, yeah, share it with us, and we'll make sure we get it out to the group.
Yeah, so Darren, I just sent you a message, but I personally don't know of any resources, but our juvenile court schools have case managers, counselors who that's their whole job is trying to help support students find employment and take that next step. And so they have loads of resources and wraparound services to help them do that. So I'm sure they would have a list of things that would be useful to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexander. We'll link up with you and Cameron as part of his project to do some of that work after the holidays. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Alex. Okay, so before we transition into the questions, I think one of the final points we sort of wanted to make here was that in a perfect world, apprenticeship funding, and we know to some degree it is formula based with RSI and other sources, but we'd like to see it more sort of formula based. Because at the moment, to really get into the apprenticeship game, you're going to have to write a grant. There's sort of no way around it, right? And I know some folks are, not as excited to sort of, put their hat in the ring around some of these grants, but I think that, a lot of the grants that are coming out, whether it's COYA, whether it's California Apprenticeship Initiative, um, they're structured in such a way that they really do kind of help sort of take you where you're at. Like if you're really at the beginning stages, there's planning resources available, right? If you're more trying to get it implemented, there's implementation or there's expansion, right? And from what we can see, there's going to continue to be, I think, significant resources, put aside for that. But at the same time, again, Mike made the point earlier, it's going to require over time, definitely a diverse portfolio of different funding and strategies, because at some point the grants run out, right? And then it's about trying to kind of sustain those programs. So that's kind of another part of why we want to really try to do our best to work regionally around, sort of working together on making sure we're connected to those resources and opportunities. All right, thanks, John. Appreciate the shout out there. John is a apprenticeship champion as well. Nice to see you on the call. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Jenny. I don't know if we had any other questions or folks, issues that folks wanted to get into from the audience here.
I think at the moment we've addressed everything that came up. Darren had a few questions, but we addressed those. So I would open it up if anybody wants to put more questions in the chat, or if you would prefer, you can take yourself off mute and just share your question with us live. Nobody? Nobody?
I don't know. Do I have to start calling on people? Well, okay. So maybe.
Hi, I will.
Okay,
It's
great.
Wanda.
Hi,
Oh, great.
Wanda.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for the information that was provided, and Mike, thanks for the shout out. So I've heard a lot about pre-apprenticeship, which is my arena. And we cover any industry. And I remember meeting Ivan, and we never had an opportunity to bring our MOU together, Ivan. So we need to go back to that. But regarding pre-apprenticeship, what are you finding as one of the major issues outside of case management, right? Do you do any kind of testing on these individuals before they come in? Are you finding that you're having issues with them showing up on time, fulfilling their obligation, or are they just there to receive the resources, right? Because you have to be careful of people's motives. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So yes, I have a lot to respond. So we actually wish we had students that were just showing up to take the resources. I was very intentionally quiet during the support services because our first pre-apprenticeship grant we wrote for California Apprenticeship Initiative, we threw in a bunch of funds for support services. It's a culinary program. Sorry for the noise. It's a culinary program. So we were giving kids who completed the program a $400 professional knife set, a full chef's outfit, professional attire, transportation assistance, and job placement services. And there was something else in there I'm not even remembering. And we can't give these things away. We are trying, like, we call probation. We're like, can you get this kid, please? We have like all this gear. We just need it out of our office at this point. Please, like, just have them show up. Have them contact us. We'll meet them at like Greek Chicken and freaking, or like in East County, whatever. We'll come bring it all. And we can't do it. So we just have had these boxes, and we'll over time we'll slowly give them out. It might be like 20, 35, but we'll slowly get rid of all of them and give them out to students. But the biggest issues we're finding is, and there's no prerequisite. It's just, we've got students in the schools. They just have to complete the course, and we're just looking for kids who are interested. So we're trying to market it. And some of them just don't complete the course. Some of them complete the course, but then, like I said, they go AWOL. The biggest challenge we have is getting kids to go directly from high school into an apprenticeship program. And this goes for across every apprenticeship we've worked with in any sector. They're finding the apprenticeships that we talk to say we're usually getting, the youngest group we're getting is usually 23, 24, when they've gone out, done something, and realized this wasn't for me. I'm going to go back to this apprenticeship program. That was a great opportunity. We've only had one kid who's gone straight from, I'm 18, I finished high school, I'm going into this apprenticeship program. And that's over the last like 4 years. So
Alexander, there's actually a lead on that. National Apprenticeship Week, I'm in Northern California, and the NCAN, which is the Northern California Apprenticeship Network, had their session on this week at Laney College, which has a culinary program, and it's kind of their showcase. That was the thing that they offered a tour at the end of. And at the end of the conversation, the person who was in charge of that program, which is, a really elaborate culinary program, and with lots of industry connections that land people into all kinds of careers and helping them start their own restaurants, was talking to the people who are running the apprenticeship program and saying that would be a terrific model. One thing, I think that they actually are going to try to put that in place up here. And so if there's any interest in sort of in seeing how that structure is coming into place for apprenticeships for that, I mean, it might be your problem is more attracting people into the program in the first place, but there's clearly a deep interest from people who are running a culinary program in making that happen, and restaurants and a model for restaurants that are looking for that kind of population.
Yes, and I should differentiate. So we have pre-apprenticeships in high schools, just any high school, and then juvenile court schools. So our juvenile court schools are the ones I was referencing. We have no problem getting students into culinary programs in high schools. Like we have culinary CTE programs, they're packed, they're awesome. And so just flipping those into pre-apprenticeships has been our strategy, because it's just the marketing's there, the curriculum's there. It's just a matter of checking that box of like, the apprenticeship has come in, reviewed this curriculum, now it's a pre-apprenticeship. But yeah, for the court school population that's been very difficult. But yeah, if you work with any high school culinary program, I'm sure they could drive a ton of foot traffic into the apprenticeship.
Right.
Well, I'm here in San Diego County, so SoCal Pre-Apprenticeship, we do a 16-week program, and it's primarily online and half of it is not. We do some in person to keep the integrity in the program, and we also do the wraparound services. And so I missed the COYA grant because the grant writer didn't submit it on time. Isn't that crazy? So, but anyway,
we've heard that before, Wanda. That's a bummer. Yeah, but we're familiar with that. Unfortunately, we've heard that before.
Yeah, completely locked out because she sent it the next day, and it was like, "What are you thinking?" And so, but anyway, we've always been here. We partner with Mike and another entity, and so we're working together to make sure we can move that needle forward. But SoCal Pre-Apprenticeship, we can operate in any industry. If you require additional requirements that they need to meet, we have about 3 to 4 weeks that's available. So like if they need to do OSHA, if they need to do some kind of, they need to get their GED, all of these different things we provide. So I just wanted to say that we are here, we are local, and I'm looking forward to more partnerships. I'm real interested in hearing from, I think it's Rachel, regarding healthcare, because I submitted my healthcare apprenticeship this week to DAS. So it's so exciting, the occupations that I have selected and moving forward. So I won't take any more time, but I appreciate you having this meeting today, and for those that were on the panel. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Wanda. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Not seeing anything in the chat. I did notice, though, we had Maria here from Division of Apprenticeship Standards. Maria, I hate to put you on the spot, but I guess I just did. Anything, any update or anything you'd like to update us on? We're not going to put you on the spot about Wanda's standards or anything, but we want to be kind to DAS.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Beautiful presentation. Thank you for putting it together. If you are a grantee, on December 5th, 11 a.m., we are having a grantee meeting. And I hear that there's a second COYA grant coming up. I put my LinkedIn profile in the chat, so feel free to follow me. I will definitely post it there as soon as I have it. And thank you for the wonderful work that you do. I'm in county, so this is near and dear to my heart. Feel free to keep my information and reach out if I can be of any assistance to all of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. We appreciate it. And we do work with Victor Rodriguez, who's been in the region a while at DAS, but appreciate our DAS partners. And yes, as part of the follow-up to this call, we will definitely try to get sort of a list together so that, as we get updates on COYA and other grants, we definitely want to get that out so folks are aware of the opportunities that are coming up. And again, making those connections around key partners to really to make it successful, right? Which is critical. Um, any other folks on the call have questions or other things? Yeah.
I had a quick question, if I could.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
My question would be, and I'm new to this space, but I'm very much interested in the apprenticeship model, as a work-based learning model. And so I guess my question would be with regard to apprenticeships and students at our district, what we were really looking for is we're trying to create pre-apprenticeship programs that go right into the pathways, industry pathways. And so in doing so, what I'm wondering is, are there, for students who are part of programs in high schools, are there things that offer them incentives in getting right into, like maybe preferential, I don't want to say preferential treatment. The word I'm looking for, I guess, is priority registration, or things like in our building construction trades, like our carpentry program. Those students they have to be OSHA certified. Like, do they get credit for that going into it? So they feel like what they're doing in high school not only is helping them set up experience-wise, but they're not having to redo certain specific things when they get into a pathway. Is what I'm asking making sense? It's making sense in my mind, but
It is.
okay.
It is. If I can jump in here and this might hurt the DASs here, so you might want to stick your fingers in your la 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 for a second. But I think there's a lot of focus on pre-apprenticeship, and the reality is that anybody that's interested in this work, really what you should be focusing on is getting as close as you can to apprenticeship. Because I'll take our program as an example. We have a registered pre-apprenticeship with the state of California, but anytime someone says like, "Hey, I'm running a grant and we're going to do a pre-apprenticeship program," I'm happy to extend them a letter and create an agreement between them so that they can get their program off the ground. So I'm not going to block anybody for trying to establish a new pre-apprenticeship program. But what I always will give them the caveat is our own program has about anywhere between 1,000 to 6,000 people on the wait list at any given period of time. And really the governor for us is not the quality of those candidates, because they have a variety of skill sets where they are. It really comes down to, like, we don't have spots in our apprenticeship program until a company comes to us and says, "I need a cohort of 15. Can you screen some folks and send us over, 15 people?" And then it's like a mad dash to look in our pool of pre-apprentices. Even folks that haven't finished the pre-apprenticeship program might fit the demographic needs of that employer, because they might say, like, we're in Santa Clara and we need people that can come into the office. And so we're going to geographically constrain the candidates to that region, right? And so we have to always be, again, thinking about the employer first. So what I would say is anybody that wants to build real, true earn and learn and build capacity in your program, you have to think about taking on as much of that as possible. Now, if they're just constraints and you're like, we can't do it, we can't do apprenticeships, then what I would say is the key for you to get more of your participants into any program that exists is help bring more employers to the table. If you can help by connecting an employer and say like, "Hey, we're in San Diego and Power Unified, you're real close to like all the tech companies in Rancho Bernardo." If you get one of them to say, "We'll commit to hiring people," then you can take that to someone that is an intermediary, and you then kind of seed the deal. And like, you are in the position of being able to bring the most important component, which is the employer. Now, if you can't bring the employer, the next thing you can bring is funding. So if you can get a funder to say, "Hey, we support, Power Unified School District," you get someone like Qualcomm to give you a $50,000 grant, that could be a couple seats in an apprenticeship program that you could have them fund. And again, you could come to us and say, "I've got 15,000 or $50,000 to spend. Can we create, 3, 4, 5 roles out of this budget?" I would think more in those terms than thinking about the logistics of the pre-apprenticeship program itself, because those are like really, really, I don't want to say simple, but very quick to stand up. Literally, you just need one document that you sign off and say, I've got an agreement with this apprenticeship program, and they will take my candidates and accept them into the program. But that's not enough, right? Like the key is not the quality of the candidates. It really is those other two pieces that have to be in place first before you can open up the flow.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I'm glad we're recording this because that little segment Mike just covered, it's like, yeah, we that's so critical. And obviously, with pre-apprenticeship, remember it's a feeder into apprenticeship. So it really is going to be driven by that demand, right, on the employer side. So that's really critical. Yeah. Let's see
Can I jump in
here.
really quick?
Yep.
Mike, with all due respect, I mean, maybe the automotive industry is a little bit different, but for us, I firmly believe that it's about the trainees and more than the employers. I think the employers, if you give them an inch, they take a mile. And for us, I'd rather focus on creating a really good entry level technician who is going to, and again, this is certainly the philosophy that we follow here, right? That I can train and I can teach and have someone be a really good trainee, and they can go into anywhere, any shop and prove their worth, as opposed to making it something where you put the employer first. Um, we've had instances we started that way, and the employers are pretty much turning the organization upside down with their demands. And as soon as we ended up switching that around, providing wraparound services, providing really good case management, meeting people where they were, we've had a lot more success since then. So I mean, I would just, for everybody who's either in the process of starting off an apprenticeship or or wants to scale or whatever it is, I mean, I think there needs to be a healthy balance, right? It's neither one or the other. I personally believe, but I really do feel that if you provide really good trainees, the employers will come. So.
Yeah. And again, I want to caveat everything that I've said so far. Everything that I've said so far is really, really hyper focused on not just IT, but high wage and high growth positions in IT. Because we could train a lot more candidates to be desktop support technicians, customer support technicians, QA apprentices, and get a lot more volume of individuals into the industry. It's just like everybody, like I've chosen to kind of like prioritize in my life that what I want to get people into is the higher wage technology roles. And again, the industry itself is going to be very different. So some industries lend themselves much better to being able to open up a lot of apprenticeship roles. So culinary really popular because there's a lot of demand for people to come in and work inside of kitchens and restaurants, etc. But by the same token, the hiring managers in technology have sort of set an expectation that they want to see people with 4-year CS degrees or electrical engineering, and then maybe they'll take some STEM folks. We have some companies here in San Diego that will not hire any software engineers unless they have a CS degree, period. That's it. So though, as much as we want to sort of like get them to drop the CS requirement, if they won't do that, then again, it's really not something that we don't have the levers to do that, which is why, again, like I think that necessitates us pushing the barriers a little bit and focusing on apprenticeship degrees. Well, if you won't accept somebody that doesn't have a CS degree, will you accept someone that's on a CS degree pathway and bring them in while they're, 2 or 3 years in? So by no means do I think that they should exclusively be driving it 100%. But what I tend to find is that a lot more of this is being driven by like higher ed and workforce than industry. So I think the balance right now in some industries really does need to be figuring out how do we bring more employers to the table. And in other industries, like right now in the traditional construction trades, they have real deficits. And so in that situation, the employers should really just like, you need to be more open to being flexible and take more people because you need more people, right? In technology, it's the other way around. And again, in some of the like the IACA, the non-traditional, trades, I feel like we're just trying to break in. We're trying to get employers to just like see our candidates as just as valuable. And so I don't know that you're at risk in different industries. I think it's just going to really come down to like the types of jobs and the types of industries. And it's good for us to have this dialogue because I think people might get a one-sided opinion if they're just thinking about how we're at creating coding careers approaching this versus if you're thinking about some of those other trades, which I 100% think there's way more opportunity for people, right? Like we've just had to make a strategic decision that for a variety of reasons, but the least of which is it's really hard when you get into a tech company in a very entry-level role that's not software engineering to get onto that team. And you might spend, 5 years, 6 years like stuck in desktop support. And if you look at the statistics and the numbers, a lot of Black and brown folks inside technology companies end up at the lowest level and not able to progress and move up. So that's sort of again the why we're attacking a very specific problem, and it's maybe different than it might be in other industries.
I wanted to thank both of you guys for both those perspectives because from the secondary level, I mean, obviously we work with primary schools too, but mostly from the secondary level, when we start to create programs, you guys probably know this, a lot of times there's a focus on this very unified approach to everything. You're creating one program and one model, and you've got to create off ramps and on ramps. And I think for us, it's yes, we do need to focus on creating the program, but also can't forget about bringing more employers to to the party in the conversation. So it's got to be a multi-pronged approach. So I appreciate hearing those perspectives because all of it's going to be helpful for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is why I've been so appreciative to get to know the individuals on the panel and just kind of so that we can have spaces to have these more nuanced, deeper conversations around, beyond the nuts and bolts. Here's how you start a pre-apprenticeship. Like to Mike's point, yeah, that's easy. The real issue is more, and I think from our consortium level in the work that Jenny and I are really trying to dig into is how can we get better at that employer engagement piece, particularly on the development side? Because we know we have folks that want to do it on the LEA side mostly, but again, there's nothing there without having that employer support and really that employer engagement. Great conversations. I know we're starting to kind of bump up against time, so just wanted to kind of do one last call for any questions or comments or anything somebody maybe wanted to promote or now's your chance.
Well, I threw a question in the chat. I was just curious about foster youth. COYA, when we hear the different categories, that's an interesting one to me, just because I'm not sure who's successfully placing those people in the apprentice world.
Well, I can tackle this quickly. My experience has been, and it's a problem. It's very problematic. Is that within corporate America, they don't have a real consistent policy around justice impacted individuals, and so it can be like really challenging to figure out how can we get something in place that we know if we make these investments in these folks, there are jobs on the other side. So it's like super speculative. On the other hand, when we talk about foster youth, I think there's this perception that these are individuals that have found themselves in desperate circumstances. And a lot of folks just don't envision there being sort of like we're not giving this person a second chance. And they're a vulnerable population that they want to sort of like figure out a way to make it work, right? And they don't present the same kind of barriers. Similar to veterans, right? People understand the sacrifice that they've made. And so there is a real stigma associated with justice impacted. And then there are some structural problems within like HR, like how do they create policies that they can tell that they will fairly apply to get like candidates into the program. And that's been my experience. And so they're really hard. The thing that I will always say for justice impacted individuals, number one, we hire justice impacted individuals and have them on our, our leadership team. And so, we walk the walk and not just talk the talk. But the other thing is that we will often encourage folks that have a justice background to consider entrepreneurship, consider working at smaller startups that can be great entryways, and they can gain experience and they can have great careers, but it might take more work if they want to go work at like a FANG company, right? Like the policies that Apple or Google or Microsoft have might just make it nearly impossible for someone even with like a minor conviction for, whatever it is. So that's usually how I address it, but I think you make a fair point. There's a lot less friction around foster youth and veterans as some of the other really vulnerable populations that we should be providing opportunities for.
I would like to take the opportunity to promote SoCal. And I heard Poway Unify say they're interested in starting a pre-apprenticeship. And I would say to anyone, instead of reinventing the wheel, collaborate with those that are already there. We've been in existence since 2019, and we do the case management and making sure we supply laptops and providing MOUs and searching for employers in whatever industry they're in, bringing the speakers. That's what I would say at the moment. Instead of putting all of these different programs out, why not utilize those that are already here and collaborate, make your program more efficient, effective, and virtually better. Not saying it's not, but when you come in with other individuals, the level of collaboration and out of the box thinking is more effective. So, anywho, thank you for the opportunity to say that.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks so much. One last comment, Jenny, and then we'll kick it. Jenny's going to wrap us up. No, appreciate that comment, Wanda, and I think that's part of, particularly in the last, say, 5 years or so, why we're, sort of as more intermediaries kind of come on the scene. I really think that's valuable in terms of utilizing intermediaries that have existing programs, standards approved, because otherwise what happens is, to your point, you have individual LEAs, employers out there trying to kind of do their own program instead of really, leveraging maybe what would, potentially already be in place. So appreciate that point. Okay, Jenny, over to you.
Sure. Oh, that's great. I love that idea of, working together. I think if we all work together, we're stronger, right? As opposed to trying to do our own little pieces. And it might make your load a lot easier if you can just collaborate with someone else instead of starting from scratch. So there's a lot of value there. But so thank you everyone for being here today. It was a great conversation. I hope everybody learned a lot. And so next we'll send the recording out to you. You can share that with your colleagues and whoever. You'll get some information about the panelists, contact information, and back there to the point about collaboration. We would just like to keep in contact with all of you. And if there are questions we can answer or things you would like to, ideas you want to throw out there, let's do it. And we just can do so much if we all work together, and it's going to be great to see how these COYA grants progress. So hopefully we'll have another opportunity to share that with you later. And happy Thanksgiving.